Flight attendant denies Mohamed Salah boarding. Then, what happens next will shock you. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, and subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The bustling terminal of Heathrow Airport was alive with the usual chaos, travelers rushing, announcements blaring, and the hum of excitement that comes with international travel. Amid the crowd, one figure stood out, Mohamed Salah, the global football icon, known as much for his humility as his unmatched skill on the field. Dressed in a simple tracksuit and a cap pulled low, Salah moved through the airport with a quiet grace, nodding politely at fans who recognized him. As he approached the gate for his flight to Cairo, the atmosphere shifted. A flight attendant, Emily Carter, stood at the boarding desk, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. When Salah handed her his boarding pass, she paused. Her gaze flicked from his face to his name on the ticket, and her lips tightened. "Mr. Salah," she said, her tone clipped, "I'm going to need you to step aside for additional screening." Salah, ever the gentleman, raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "Additional screening?" he asked calmly. "I've already gone through security." Emily didn't blink. "It's standard procedure," she replied, though the line behind him moved smoothly, with no other passengers being stopped. The tension was palpable. Salah's sharp instincts kicked in. He'd faced defenders on the field, but this was different. This wasn't about football. This was about fairness. "Standard for who?" he asked, his voice steady but edged with steel. Emily hesitated just for a moment, but it was enough. Salah knew this wasn't about security. It was personal. Behind him, passengers began to murmur. A young boy holding a Salah jersey looked confused, while a businessman glanced at his watch impatiently. Salah stood his ground, his calm demeanor masking the storm brewing beneath. He wasn't just fighting for himself now. He was fighting for every person who'd ever been unfairly targeted because of who they were. The gate area grew tense as Mohamed Salah stood firm, his presence commanding respect even in the face of Emily's dismissive attitude. Emily, her cheeks flushed but her voice steady, repeated, "Sir, if you don't comply, I'll have to deny you boarding." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Salah, known for his composure both on and off the field, didn't raise his voice. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his calm yet firm tone cutting through the tension. "I'd like to speak to your supervisor," he said, leaving no room for argument. Emily hesitated, her confidence wavering under Salah's unwavering gaze. She turned abruptly and walked toward the gate desk, whispering something to a younger attendant. Salah watched her, his mind racing. He'd faced countless challenges in his career, pressure on the pitch, scrutiny from the media, but this was different. This wasn't a game, this was real life, and he wasn't about to back down. The passengers behind him began murmuring, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. A woman in her 40s whispered to her husband, "That's Mohamed Salah. Why are they treating him like this?" The husband shook his head, equally baffled. Salah, aware of the growing crowd, remained focused. He wasn't just standing up for himself, he was standing up for every person who'd ever felt marginalized or unfairly treated. Moments later, a middle-aged man with a name tag that read Greg Thompson, gate manager, arrived. His expression was a mix of curiosity and concern. "Mr. Pickett, Greg." "Salah," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Greg. What seems to be the issue here?" Salah shook his hand firmly but didn't mince words. "Your employee here," he said, nodding toward Emily, "is refusing to let me board without a valid reason. I've already gone through security, and I've got a charity event in Cairo I can't miss." Greg glanced at Emily, who was now avoiding eye contact. "Emily," he asked, his tone sharp. "What's going on?" Emily stammered. "I was just following protocol." He was selected for additional screening. Greg frowned, checking the system. "Selected by whom? There's no note here about additional screening." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's face turned red, and she shifted uncomfortably. Greg turned back to Salah, his expression apologetic. "Mr. Salah, you're cleared to board. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." Salah nodded, his gaze lingering on Emily for a moment. "Thank you," he said, his voice calm but carrying an unspoken warning. As he walked toward the jet bridge, the murmurs of the passengers grew louder. Some were recording on their phones while others exchanged knowing looks. Emily stood frozen, her confidence shattered. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. As Mohamed Salah stepped onto the jet bridge, the tension at the gate didn't dissipate, it intensified. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation were buzzing with excitement, their phones out and recording. A young woman in a hoodie leaned over to her friend and whispered, Did that just happen? Mohamed Salah just got into it with a flight attendant. Her friend nodded, already uploading the video to social media with the caption, Mohamed Salah stands up to unfair treatment at Heathrow. This is wild, bro. Meanwhile, Emily stood at the gate desk, her hands trembling as she tried to compose herself. Greg, the supervisor, was on the radio, his voice low but urgent. We've got a situation at gate 12. I need someone from PR down here now. The younger attendant, who had been silent during the confrontation, finally spoke up. Emily, what were you thinking? That's Mohamed Salah. Do you know how bad this looks? Emily shot her a glare but said nothing. Her mind was racing. She hadn't expected Salah to push back. She hadn't expected anyone to push back. But Mohamed Salah wasn't just anyone. He was a global icon, a man who had built his career on resilience, humility, and standing up for what's right. And now, thanks to a dozen smartphones and the power of social media, the whole world was about to see it. By the time Salah's plane was in the air, the video of the confrontation had already started making waves online. Twitter was ablaze with hashtags like #Salah vs Emily and #airport injustice. One user wrote, Mohamed Salah just did what we all wish we could do, stand up to unfair treatment with class and dignity. Another commented, Emily messed with the wrong legend. This is epic. Back at the airport, Emily was called into a meeting with senior airline staff. The room was tense, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? One executive snapped, slamming a tablet on the table. We're trending for all the wrong reasons. Emily tried to defend herself. I was just following protocol, she insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. Protocol? Another executive interjected. There's no protocol that justifies targeting a passenger like that, especially not Mohamed Salah. Emily's heart sank. She thought she was making a statement, standing up for her beliefs, but now she realized she had crossed a line and the consequences were coming fast. As the video of the confrontation continued to spread, reaching millions of views within hours, the airline's PR team scrambled to contain the damage. A statement was hastily released. We are aware of the incident involving a gate agent and a passenger at Heathrow Airport. We take these matters seriously and are conducting a full review. We do not condone discrimination of any kind, but the internet wasn't buying it. Comments flooded in with users demanding accountability. Fire Emily. One tweet read, This isn't just about Mohamed Salah. It's about how your employees treat all passengers, another added. Meanwhile, Mohamed Salah sat quietly on the plane, his headphones on and his gaze fixed out the window. He wasn't one to seek out drama, but he knew this wasn't just about him. It was about fairness, about standing up for what's right, and if his actions inspired others to do the same, then so be it. The wheels of justice were turning, and Emily was about to learn a hard lesson. Back at the airport, Emily sat in a small office, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her representative sat across from her, their expression stern. Emily, they began, this isn't just about the incident with Mr. Salah. We've received multiple complaints about your behavior in the past. This was the final straw. Emily's heart raced. She had always believed she was doing the right thing, standing up for her values. But now, faced with the consequences, she felt a sinking sense of dread. What's going to happen to me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The HR representative sighed. You're being placed on immediate suspension, pending further investigation. But honestly, Emily, it doesn't look good. Outside the office, the airport buzzed with activity. But for Emily, the world felt like it had come to a standstill. By the time Mohamed Salah's plane touched down in Cairo, the video of the confrontation had gone viral globally. News outlets picked up the story, with headlines like Mohamed Salah takes a stand against airport bias and flight attendant faces backlash after targeting football legend. Salah, however, stayed out of the spotlight. He didn't give interviews or make statements. Instead, he focused on his charity event, letting his actions speak for themselves. The impact of what he had done was undeniable. People everywhere were inspired by his quiet strength and unwavering principles. Social media was flooded with messages of support. One fan wrote, Salah didn't just stand up for himself. He stood up for all of us who've ever been treated unfairly. Another added, this is why we love him, not just for his goals, but for his heart. Meanwhile, the airline was under mounting pressure. The public demanded transparency and accountability. In response, the company announced that Emily had been terminated, effective immediately. The statement read, "We reaffirm our commitment to fair treatment for all passengers, regardless of their background or beliefs. The actions of this employee do not reflect our values." For Emily, the fallout was relentless. Her termination made headlines, and the backlash was overwhelming. Social media was flooded with comments calling for her to be blacklisted from the airline industry. "She got what she deserved," one tweet read. "This is what happens when you let personal bias cloud your judgment," another added. Emily, now unemployed and facing public scrutiny, retreated from the spotlight. She spent her days at home, avoiding the news and the endless notifications on her phone. But as the days turned into weeks, she began to reflect on what had happened. Had she really been standing up for her beliefs, or had she let her biases get the better of her? It was a hard pill to swallow, but Emily knew she had to take responsibility for her actions. Mohamed Salah arrived at his charity event in Cairo, greeted by cheers and applause from fans who had gathered to see their hero. The event, aimed at providing sports equipment and facilities for underprivileged children, was a cause close to Salah's heart. As he addressed the crowd, his voice was filled with passion and humility. "Every child deserves a chance to dream," he said, his words resonating deeply with the audience. Despite the chaos of the past 24 hours, Salah remained focused on his mission. He spent hours interacting with the children, playing football with them, and sharing stories of his journey from a small village in Egypt to becoming a global icon. The kids looked up at him with awe, inspired not just by his achievements, but by his kindness and down-to-earth nature. As the event wrapped up, a young boy approached Salah, clutching a worn-out football. "Mr. Salah," the boy said shyly, "thank you for standing up for us. You're my hero." Salah smiled warmly and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "No," he replied, "heroes are people who stand up for what's right, no matter how hard it is. You can be a hero too." The moment was captured by photographers and quickly shared online, adding another layer to Salah's growing legacy. While the world celebrated him for his actions at the airport, Salah remained humble, redirecting the attention to the importance of fairness and kindness. Weeks after the incident, Emily sat alone in her small apartment, the weight of her actions heavy on her shoulders. The constant barrage of negative comments and messages had taken its toll, but it had also forced her to confront herself in ways she never had before. She replayed the events of that day in her mind, questioning her motives and decisions. "I was just doing my job," she had told herself repeatedly, but deep down she knew there was more to it. Her biases, whether conscious or not, had influenced her actions. She had let her personal feelings cloud her judgment, and it had cost her everything. One evening, as she scrolled through the news, she came across an article about Mohamed Salah's charity work in Cairo. The photos of him smiling with children, the quotes about fairness, and standing up for what's right, it all hit her like a wave. She realized that Salah wasn't just a football star. He was a man who used his platform to make a difference, and she had stood in his way. Tears welled up in her eyes as she closed her laptop. For the first time, she felt genuine remorse. She knew she couldn't undo what she had done, but she also knew she couldn't stay stuck in this cycle of guilt and regret. She had to do something, not to redeem herself in the eyes of the world, but to find peace within herself. The next morning, Emily made a decision. She reached out to a local community center that worked with underprivileged youth. "I'd like to volunteer," she said when they answered the phone. "I want to help." It was a small step, but it was a start. The fallout from the incident didn't just affect Emily and Mohamed Salah, it sent shockwaves through the airline industry. The company, facing immense public pressure, knew it had to take decisive action to restore its reputation. Senior executives held emergency meetings, brainstorming ways to address the systemic issues that had led to the confrontation. Within weeks, the airline announced sweeping changes. New training programs were introduced to educate employees about bias, discrimination, and cultural sensitivity. Staff were encouraged to speak up if they witnessed unfair treatment, and a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination was implemented. "We are committed to creating an inclusive environment for both our employees and passengers," the CEO said in a public statement. What happened with Mr. Salah was a wake-up call, and we are determined to learn from it. The changes were met with cautious optimism. Passengers shared their experiences on social media, some praising the airline for taking responsibility, while others remained skeptical. "Actions speak louder than words," one tweet read. "Let's see if they actually follow through." Meanwhile, Mohamed Salah's actions continued to inspire. The video of him standing up to Emily had become a symbol of resilience and fairness, shared millions of times with captions like, "Stand up for what's right," and Salah, a legend on and off the field. His charity work in Cairo also gained more attention, with donations pouring in to support his initiatives. Emily's first day at the community center was nerve-wracking. She walked in, unsure of what to expect, but determined to make a difference. The staff welcomed her warmly, and she was assigned to help with a sports program for kids. As she watched the children play, their laughter and energy reminded her of the joy she had once found in her job. One afternoon, as she helped organize equipment, a young boy approached her. "Are you new here?" he asked, his eyes curious. Emily nodded, smiling. "Yes, I'm Emily. What's your name?" The boy grinned. "I'm Ali. Do you like football?" Emily hesitated for a moment, then replied, "I'm learning to appreciate it." As the weeks went by, Emily found herself growing attached to the kids. She listened to their stories, their dreams, and their struggles. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was part of something meaningful. The weight of her past actions didn't disappear, but it became easier to carry as she focused on helping others. One day, the center announced a special guest, Mohamed Salah. The kids erupted in excitement, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected to face him again, especially not here. When Salah arrived, he was as humble and kind as ever, spending hours with the children and even joining them for a game of football. As the event wound down, Emily found herself standing alone, watching from a distance. Salah noticed her and walked over. "Emily, right?" he asked, his tone calm and non-judgmental. She nodded, her throat tight. "Mr. Salah, I just want to say I'm sorry for everything." Salah smiled gently. "We all make mistakes," he said. "What matters is what we do after. You're here trying to make things right. That's what counts." His words brought tears to her eyes. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, not just for redemption, but for a better future. The story of Mohamed Salah and Emily didn't end with an apology or a simple resolution. It became a turning point for both of them and for the countless people who followed their journey. Salah's quiet strength and unwavering principles continued to inspire millions, while Emily's efforts to rebuild her life served as a reminder that change is always possible. The airline, now under new leadership, became a model for inclusivity and fairness. Passengers noticed the difference, and the company's reputation slowly began to heal. "We've learned from our mistakes," the CEO said in an interview, "and we're committed to doing better." Emily, though still carrying the weight of her past, found purpose in her work at the community center. She became a mentor to the kids, teaching them not just about sports, but about kindness and resilience. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she told them, "but it's up to you to make it count." As for Salah, his legacy only grew stronger. He continued to use his platform to advocate for fairness and equality, both on and off the field. When asked about the incident at the airport, he simply smiled and said, "It wasn't about me. It was about standing up for what's right. That's something we all can do." The video of the confrontation remained online, not as a reminder of conflict, but as a symbol of hope. It showed that even in the face of adversity, one person's courage can spark change. And as the world moved forward, the story of Mohamed Salah and Emily served as a powerful reminder. Fairness, kindness, and redemption are always worth fighting for. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales. Let us know in the comments, what would you have done in Salah's or Emily's situation? Stay tuned for more stories that uplift, inspire, and remind us of the power of standing up for what's right. Months turned into years, and the story of Mohamed Salah and Emily became a timeless lesson in fairness, accountability, and redemption. Salah's career continued to soar, both on and off the pitch. He launched new initiatives to support underprivileged communities, using his fame to shine a light on issues like education, healthcare, and equality. His humility and kindness made him not just a football legend, but a global icon of hope. Emily, too, found her footing. Her work at the community center became her passion, and she eventually took on a leadership role, helping to expand programs that empowered young people. She never forgot the lessons she learned from that fateful day at the airport. "It changed me," she would often say. "It made me realize that fairness isn't just a word, it's a responsibility." The airline, now a leader in inclusivity, implemented even more progressive policies, setting an example for the industry. Passengers noticed the difference, and the company's reputation was restored. "We're not perfect, the CEO admitted in an interview, but we're committed to learning and growing. One day, as Salah visited the community center in Cairo, he was greeted by a familiar face, Emily. She had traveled to Egypt to see the impact of his work firsthand. Mr. Salah, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for showing me what true strength looks like. Salah shook her hand warmly. Thank you for proving that people can change, he replied. As they stood together, surrounded by the laughter of children, it was clear that their story had come full circle. What began as a moment of conflict had transformed into a powerful message of hope and redemption. And as the sun set over Cairo, casting a golden glow over the city, it was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a chance for light. The story of Mohamed Salah and Emily didn't just end in Cairo or at the community center. It sparked a global movement. People from all walks of life were inspired by their journey, and the hashtag fairness for all began trending on social media. Stories of individuals standing up against bias and injustice flooded the internet, each one a testament to the power of courage and compassion. In London, a young woman shared how she confronted a manager at her workplace for discriminating against a colleague. In New York, a teacher started a program to teach students about empathy and fairness, using Salah and Emily's story as a case study. Even in small towns, people began to reflect on their own actions and biases, asking themselves, am I treating others the way they deserve to be treated? Salah, ever humble, continued to use his platform to amplify these stories. This isn't about me, he said in an interview. It's about all of us. Every small act of kindness, every stand for fairness, it adds up. Together, we can create a world where everyone is treated with respect. Emily, now a respected advocate for inclusivity, traveled the world to share her story. She spoke at conferences, schools, and community events, always ending her talks with the same message: change starts with you. It's never too late to do the right thing. The airline, too, became a symbol of transformation. Its new policies and training programs were adopted by other companies, creating a ripple effect across the industry. Passengers noticed the difference, and the company's slogan, "Fairness First," became a rallying cry for travelers everywhere. As the years passed, the story of Salah and Emily became a modern-day parable, taught in schools and shared around dinner tables. It reminded people that even in a world full of challenges, there is always hope, and that one act of courage can change everything.